What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are reviewing Robert Eggers' The Northman. Anyone familiar with Robert Eggers' body of work knows that he's a much more artistic filmmaker, kind of veering towards the abstract and the experimental. Films like The Witch and The Lighthouse just kind of reinforce that. And typically he's not one for making mainstream film. So I think the promotion for this film, particularly in the UK, has definitely misled audiences into expecting more of a mainstream film than what it actually is. Take the main poster being used to promote the film in the UK, which is kind of completely different from the ones being used to promote it internationally. Front and centre is just Alexander Skarsgård's abs, completely in colour, very bright sort of character collage poster, compared to the much more moody, silhouetted, atmospheric posters being used for other countries. Along with the critics' quotation being used to market this film, this generation's Gladiator. I don't think anything could be further from the truth, because The Northman is nothing like your kind of typical Ridley Scott epic with massive armies clashing, massive culture divides. The Northman is a very intimate tale of revenge and very faithful to its source material. As someone who's done a module on kind of the Norse sagas in translation, particularly like the Outlaw sagas, it was really interesting to see how Robert Eggers adapted those into a very cinematic medium, and just really satisfying to see how faithful he managed to stay to the texts. Everything from the very kind of dry, laconic dialogue to the kind of cut and paste chopping of the narrative, to Amleth's encounter with the supernatural in the tomb and getting the weapon, was directly taken from moments in the Outlaw sagas like Grettir Saga, Harthur Saga, Gisli Saga. It was just fantastic to see these texts kind of manifested in a way that wasn't excessively expositional, and just given to us to absorb and appreciate. And I respect it even further now that Robert Eggers has confirmed that if he had the choice, he would have liked to have done it all in Old Norse. You know, that just makes me respect the man even more for kind of striving for that authenticity. But, you know, faithfulness to the source material and historical accuracy only gets you so far. You know, they don't guarantee a good film. So what makes The Northman great? Well, Robert Eggers, I think more than anything else, has a real taste for atmosphere and tone. He's very good at kind of setting the scene and setting the tone for the film he wants to make. He's worked with the same director of photography for all three of his films, I think, and together they've cultivated this very unique aesthetic style, which tends to frame characters very front and centre. There's something a bit Wes Anderson about the kind of symmetry he creates in his frames. And the longer takes being used in this film as well really kind of contribute to the physicality of Alexander Skarsgård, especially in the kind of combat sequences, but also really allow you to get involved in some of the kind of meatier dialogue scenes, of which there aren't many, so you really appreciate when you do get them, like the scene between grown-up Amleth and Nicole Kidman, sort of 2/3 of the way into the film. The music was phenomenal. I love all that kind of Scandinavian folklore music, and the fact that Robert Eggers kind of used original instruments from the time period to contribute to the soundtrack just makes me love it even more. Marrying the real tangible world with the kind of supernatural world has always been something that Eggers likes to do, but I think it comes across most strongly here because he's bringing to life a culture that did intersect with religion and the supernatural so intensely. So things like Amleth's destiny being foretold by the seeress, his encounter with the dead warrior in the tomb, the kind of Valkyrie at the end, they all seamlessly kind of fit into the story. And don't feel out of place at all. I think my one issue with The Northman is pace. I think it could have been about 20 minutes shorter, particularly in the middle section of the film, once kind of Amleth reaches Fjolnir's farmstead. There's a lot of kind of just skulking around and kind of biding his time, waiting for the right opportunity to strike for his revenge, that I personally didn't think added much to the narrative or the themes of the story. And kind of just dispersed the pacing and the kind of tensions being established. But structurally, I think the first act is really fantastic. I think the final act is, again, really immersive, atmospheric, brilliant conclusion. I think it does only struggle in the middle of the film and potentially could have done with a bit of trimming, but that doesn't detract from the overall experience. It's the type of film you really need to watch again, because I think with all of Robert Eggers' films, you don't really know what to expect. You do to an extent. So the first time you watch one of his artistic pieces, it's very much kind of being overwhelmed with subtext and kind of ambience and trying to dissect all the visuals. and it's a lot to take in. So I think, like I found with The Lighthouse, it's just more rewarding on repeat viewing. When I went to see it in the cinema, you could definitely tell there were quite a few people who had expected something completely different. And you could just tell from the body language and how often they were checking the times on their phone that they weren't really vibing it. So I think it's definitely been mismarketed as a film, and unless you're familiar with Robert Eggers' previous films, you probably would have gone in quite blind, expecting something a bit different. I think all the performances are fantastic. Alexander Skarsgård was phenomenal. I think that clip where he declares, "I am Amleth the Beowulf," has got to be kind of one of the most chilling, raw performance moments I've had in a film in the last year.
And I am his vengeance!
Just, he really nails it. Physically, vocally, he really gets into the character. And there isn't really a false note in the film in terms of performance. The violence in the film feels very unique, and I don't really know how to describe it until you watch it, but it feels quite slow. So in retrospect, I really don't know what to make of the actual combat. I loved the final duel in the volcano. I thought that was brilliant. And I love the kind of longer takes being used to show the fights. But there was a real kind of lethargy to the movements being used. They very rarely felt rapid and aggressive. It was much more kind of precise, which at times may have made it feel a bit staged, I'm not too sure. But it was really immersive, and I think for Robert Eggers' first time making a more kind of action-heavy film, he did a really good job. But do let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Liking and subscribing would be a huge help to my channel. I really would implore you to go and check out The Northman in cinemas. I think it's really going to struggle to kind of make a bit of a dent in the box office. I would really urge you to check it out. Go in with an open mind. Watch The Witch and The Lighthouse to kind of get yourself prepared for the type of film you're going to be watching, and just kind of let it brush over you. Sit there with a nice ale and just kind of lap it all up, because it really is a treat for the eyes and the ears. But thank you for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.